NFL draft review. Injuries befall Aaron Judge and Jacob deGrom. It's a rainy Sunday as we come to you live. Diamond Diehards is on. Joe Rizzo here, bringing you baseball along with the dog, Jeff Healy. Well, not just baseball, but it is our NFL draft review. We have done previews. We've done special episodes before, but we're going to split this one. We're going to kick it off with a review of the NFL draft with a little more of a local slant, go a little in depth on the Giants and the Jets, plus the Eagles and the Cowboys and a couple other teams that pop up. We'll go over the injuries to Aaron Judge and Jacob deGrom, the struggle for the Mets at their starting staff between the injuries and suspensions, and a little story later on that I promised one of our pals on Twitter. We'll get to that toward the end. So if you like what you hear and you want to get involved a little bit more, the way to do that is to look for Diamond Diehards anywhere on social media. But right now, if we happen to be coming to you live, that means you've already joined the Facebook group, or at least you found us on the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Diamond Diehards, where we typically do our live streams, if we do live streams, which is not always, but most of the time we do that. And on this Sunday afternoon at 4:50, it is raining like crazy for, days, it seems, here in the Northeast. So what better to do than to warm you up with a little NFL stuff and some more baseball stuff as well. Follow the dog on Twitter at Jeff Healy 8. That's Jeff Healy and then the number 8. And you can follow me, Joe Rizzo, at Diamond Diehards on Twitter or anywhere on social media. Just look for Diamond Diehards and you will find that. Short of all that, you can go to diamonddiehards.com and check us out there. So, Dawg, you and I both really liked. We both really are big fans of The Athletic. Both have been longtime subscribers to that. And Mike Jones of The Athletic did what we felt like was a pretty solid and succinct winners and losers from the NFL draft. And that's what we're going to use kind of as our basis. The Giants and the Jets were not included in the winners and losers, but the Eagles and the Cowboys were. So that's going to kind of cover the four teams that we're going to look at least in depth, and then whoever else is on there. And then later when we get to the baseball stuff, we get to the baseball stuff. But first, FMSgraphics.com is a family-owned, family-run business for over 50 years. Go to FMSgraphics.com for all of your printing and promotional needs, FMSgraphics.com. And as Dawg knows, and many of you know, that if you are interested in anybody that we mentioned during the show as far as sponsors are concerned, it's always in the description, no matter where you are. If you're on Facebook, if you're on YouTube, if you are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because those are really the big four. If you're anywhere there, just go to the description of the show and you can find out more about our advertisers. Dawg, welcome. A little extra setup, a little, we always joke how we assault our listeners or we attack them from out of nowhere. But today we did a little extra prep, more prep than normal. I feel like we prepped for probably about an hour leading up to going on here live. And, thanks for finding this article and pointing it out to me, because this is a really good way to kick it off. And, right there as the Giants fans, we got to pay homage to the Eagles, but I'll let you start.
Yeah, tough one. You got to tip your hat to Howie Roseman. He's just continuing to rock. It's always kind of fun when you see the article, like it sort of jives with, it's like anything else, right? You want to be right, right? So we were kind of kidding going through the draft. We're like, oh, man, the freaking Eagles are just killing this thing once again, and it really sort of worked out, and they were reflected as the top winner in the draft. Obviously, I had a lot of draft capital coming in, which helps out the situation. But yeah, everyone was kidding around. We're going to rename them the Philadelphia Bulldogs, and just like basically everyone from the 2021 Georgia Bulldog defense was sick. They pretty much got them all. So Jalen Carter, I work with a big Eagles fan. He was praying that Jalen Carter would slide down to him. So the Eagles were able to go and pick up Jalen Carter, which is just going to make life even harder for the poor Giant offensive line. And then Nolan Smith sliding down and managed to get him at the bottom of the first round is another just great pickup on there. They add Healy Ringo, another Bulldog later on in the corner. So another good spot there. You got another corner as well. And then they like the kicker on it was picking up DeAndre Swift, which everyone says as soon as Detroit, in only Detroit fashion, goes and takes a second running back to top 12. So they pick their running back, and they wind up going and putting DeAndre Swift up for the bid. Eagles go in and get him for I think a 3 or a 4. I think a 3, but I could be wrong on that. Whatever it was a great trade for the Eagles, getting a high quality guy in there. So just once again, the Eagles really cranking away. I was sort of talking about how and we'll sort of talking to the Giants too, that the draft kind of just sort of fell their way. I would say that kind of worked out that way for the Giants, and it went even more that way with the Eagles. That it's just like there was value, and value slipped, and it basically went in, matched value and need perfectly for that team.
Yeah, you kind of hit it, right? I mean, I don't know if there's too much more to say except for this, right? It always comes down to a couple of things when it's the draft. The first thing that it comes down to is all of this stuff is speculation. All of it's on paper. Otherwise, they wouldn't even have a draft. They would just assign players to teams, right? Or it just would. It's not an exact science. Otherwise, every team would just always have the guys that they want. Every draft pick would always make every team, and it just doesn't work out that way. If you look at Jalen Carter, I mean, value-wise, it looks like a steal at 9. But you have to go back and say, why was the guy picked at 9? Is he going to be Warren Sapp, or is he going to be Ryan Leaf? Like or maybe Leaf's not the best guy to say, but like some guy who fell because of questions, and then the answers to those questions ended up being the reason why the guy fell, and like he's out of the league in a couple of years. Every guy that the Raiders took the last 4 years. How about that?
Yeah,
or you know what I mean?
Or a giant cornerback.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing, right? Like
100%.
he's a good guy to do it as, because as this example, right? The reason that the guy fell is because there are questions about that character.
Yeah.
And maybe, I mean, Nolan Smith, maybe not even as much, right? Like he only fell because he's sort of like undersized, which maybe in the end might be an advantage in the way that position's going. But it just doesn't always work out the way that you think it's going to work out. And that's why, this kid has to get his contract signed. He's got to make sure his weight isn't a problem. He's got to make sure that his conduct is not a problem. There are some ifs there.
Yep.
There's no if on the talent, like none, right?
Yep.
If there was no if on the talent, the guy's going probably in the top three, right? Because you can't say that somebody would have gone over Will Anderson as the first defensive player. Probably. I think that's safe to say.
Yep. Absolutely.
He's going no worse than 4. Just if somebody loved Will Anderson more than they liked him, that would be the only way. But because of the quarterbacks were there, he was going to be, he's that level of talent. So on paper, it looks like an absolutely unbelievable draft. And plus, like you said, you're lamenting on our text thread when they got DeAndre Swift. You're like, gee, what are they doing? I almost felt like, what were the Lions doing?
Oh, 100%. That's completely opposite one on there, right? I mean, did that, and then Campbell too. Taking Campbell in the first round. I'm like that's another aggressive move for they were saying like they know what decade it is. I was like, that was a good draft for 1987. But, we'll see. You never know on that one. But and somehow the Eagles, it feels like the entire franchise has a void year. So I mean, I don't know how the money math somehow magically works, or when it finally comes home to roost for him or something. But somehow there's always room. There's always a way to sign whoever, even though you would swear there's no way. Howie finds a way.
At least on that day, he found a way.
Yeah.
And things have worked out their way, with a lot of these picks. I think he gave him the benefit of the doubt because of things like, he had Carson Wentz there and he drafted Jalen Hurts, and everyone's like, why are you drafting Jalen Hurts? Like, what? You're a team that's trying to win now, and like you're using a 2nd-round pick on another quarterback when you have a quarterback who's signed. And during the Super Bowl year, before he got hurt, he was the leading candidate for NFL MVP. But he was, he saw the forest through the trees. And I think that's why when you look at picks like the ones he made, but particularly the Carter pick, you feel like you're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Look, these things happen.
And
in
that Carson Wentz trade, I mean, how many dividends has that paid off for them?
Yeah, well, this was one, right?
My Lord, yeah.
This was one.
Yeah, you look at, I mean, it's like 5 or 6 starters that they've got out of that thing. It's just like ridiculous. What they want to get for it, especially compared to what what their guys got on the other side. So it's brutal. All right, should we move on to the next guys?
Yeah.
All right, so now we're going on to the Seattle Seahawks coming in. So Pete Carroll and John Schneider with the good ones here. They got interesting going with a smaller cornerback. So it's funny, like you want to default saying Legion of Boom, but actually going a little bit smaller for the corner with Devin Witherspoon. Great talent though. And then taking the top wide receiver, which again was slid way down. I mean, I think he went like 18, 19, something like that.
Yeah.
For Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I was like when now there was sort of rumors that it wasn't a super awesome wide receiver class kind of coming in, and people were so expectant. That's why you thought maybe the Giants be able to get some wide receivers. But he was and Jigba was the one that they kind of thought would go fairly early, and he really slipped down. And again, just sort of met value and meet need for the Seahawks there. So as
that pick was getting close, I was wondering, I'm like, wow, the Giants going to try to trade up to get him right there. And then he goes and 4 straight wide receivers go. First time it's ever happened in the NFL draft where 4 wide receivers go in a row, I think just in the first round.
And Riz, why did that happen? Who did what immediately in the 30 seconds prior to that? Wow, all the wide receivers and corners are all here.
Yeah,
that's the Dawg in the draft.
That's the Dawg in our. Well, that was our Zoom. That was our Zoom.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, you said it in the Zoom.
And that lit it on fire.
Yeah, our pal Jerry Milani. That was like a show. We should have just gone live while we were doing that because it ended up just being the 3 of us. Yeah, it was like a show. But yeah, Dawg kicked off the run on wide receivers and then corners.
Oh, Joe Shane, sorry about that.
See, a lot of this stuff is like we're grading the top of these drafts. What's really, really hard to do at this time, and what really ends up being the difference in most of the reviews of drafts, which, like, Dawg, what would you say, 3-4 years down the road is a fair time to review drafts, right?
Yeah, 3 years is sort of like the sort of benchmark one.
Like theoretically, we should be doing a show right now that reviews the 2020 draft.
Yeah,
it's probably fair. That sounds like a Bill Simmons thing on the Ringer to do. Like,
yeah, that would be cool. It was funny. I was thinking of like going back and like, well, they did an occasion with like the guys like re-signing. I saw that for like a trade. Doing the trade thing based on the re-sign contract, the second contracts by players and stuff like that by the pick.
Yeah,
which was actually pretty fast. That's one for another. Yeah, for maybe one for another episode on there. But yeah, that's cool to kind of see that out and see how it shakes out.
It's so it's hard to grade that. Like, it's hard to make grades. That's why like winners and losers are arbitrary, and they're mostly based on what you're seeing at the top of the draft. But really what ends up being the difference is which teams hit after the first round on the majority of picks, who gets a starter in the 4th round, or their quarterback in the NFC Championship game with Mr. Irrelevant, right? Like, does that, does the Brock Purdy pick at Mr. Irrelevant number, whatever it was last year, make the 49er draft last season, just an unmitigated success. I mean, even, so he got hurt in the game, but he got them there. They never get there without him, stepping in. They never get there with that, throwaway pick on draft day. So again,
It was funny in the copycat league, right? I was waiting for that. Austin was like what, fifth round, I think. All of a sudden, he had the run on quarterbacks. Like I sort of thought it would be the seventh round that everyone was going to go for the Brock Purdy, and everyone kind of jumped it early on that one. And I said, NFL, everyone sees what's working, and everyone jumps on it right away.
Yeah, but it's smart, right? Like if you're going to copycat stuff that wins.
Yeah, it's funny. I will say probably the only two organizations do like this level of depth and analysis and whatever, to me, is like the Department of Defense and like the NFL teams. That's what they're going on, like where you can have so many resources devoted to like plans and different permutations and things like that. It really is just it's remarkable, right? I mean, what other league can have 3 days of wall-to-wall coverage for their draft after like 3 months of like hype leading into it? It's just remarkable. Like, you might get a week for MLB, right? You get a little fired up. I mean, it's different. The season's not going and so forth, but you don't just get anywhere near the focus that you get for the NFL.
Yeah, and they've made it into what's the expression? Like a tentpole event, right?
Yeah.
Where it's just, they're in Kansas City. They have the outdoor stage thing connected to Union Station. The players are in there at least for the first day. The guys like Will Levis was there the first day. He left for day 2, but one of the guys stayed. The guy who Carolina picked. Yeah.
Jim wear that red dress again. You're gonna burn that one.
Yeah. Hey, come on. She's not Meghan Markle. She doesn't have to burn her dress and claim poverty. All right, Steelers are another winner here. Again, and we're go to The Athletic, subscribe there. It's a great thing, especially not just around the draft, but baseball, hockey, whatever you like. Mike Jones, we're looking at the Mike Jones winners and losers from 2023 NFL draft, if that's what you're searching for. Steelers. This was kind of an interesting one, right? Like this was the whole Patriots screwing the Jets, and Broderick Jones ends up as a Steeler, the tackle. But then they went tight end, and they got Darnell Washington. Now Darnell Washington, I think, Dawg, is a guy who's really more known as like a blocker. He's like an extra offensive lineman.
Yeah, versus the other top two, Kincaid and Meyer, were much more offensive weapons than Washington.
Yeah,
that. I mean, really, it was classic meat and potatoes, right? So offensive line, defensive line, building from the inside out, and with good young quarterback trying to build around, so forth. Just smart picking, and that's what people
and the running back, and you have Kenny Pickett was like, I'll tell you what, he was a guy that a lot of people talked about on draft day last year, where they were like, well, he's got small hands. But he looks like he's the most NFL ready, but he's got the lowest upside and blah, blah, blah. And you know what, Dawg? He came in and he played pretty well for them last year. And he played pretty well from them from a standpoint of not just being able to project him for the future as a guy who could put up stats, but like it looks like he has the clutch gene. Like he looks like a guy who's not only will put up the stats, but can like win you games. That's a hard thing to come by with a quarterback, right? Like look at Zach Wilson. I mean, he's a good example so far. The guy can make every single throw an NFL quarterback needs to make. But if you don't put the other stuff together, what does it matter? It doesn't make a difference until you put that together.
And your entire team hates you.
Yeah, but so Jeff George is kind of always the example that you go back to. Mm-hmm. Like Jeff George, once his tools started to diminish, but his acumen, started to take over, like that's when he became a much better quarterback, right? Like he became a good quarterback late in his career. Like Geno Smith's another guy. Like nobody ever nobody ever knocked Gino's talent, but for some reason he just didn't have something else that was helping him put it together. And a lot of times it's not even on the player. It could be the
Yeah, the
organization that
fit.
you're in.
Yeah.
It could be the GM. It could be the coach. It could be these guys, have a different offensive coordinator every year. Look at Daniel Jones, right? He was a guy, once things settled down here, and he's playing in a system and they could start, putting in pieces around him or with him to work with, he looks like he has a chance to be, much better than what people thought he was going to be before last season. So, Pickett got off to a good start, and this looks like, an even better start. And the Steelers are just, this is why they're in contention for the playoffs at least every year. And there is that whole thing of, well, the worst spot to be in is always just battling for a playoff spot, and some years making it and some years coming up short, because you're never drafting high enough to get that super impact player. And you always have to overpay your guys that are only getting you to a certain standpoint in overall success when it comes to like counting the playoffs. Like how far are you winning in the playoffs? Like, are you actually making a Super Bowl, or are you actually able to actually win the Super Bowl? But the Steelers kind of, I mean, that's their thing. Like their thing is they're going to always be in contention. And, with Mike Tomlin, I don't know how he's an underrated coach, but he is. He just is. He's taken for granted. His greatness is just taken for granted because he gets, he'll beat you with your 11 and he'll beat you with his 11. That's a hard thing for a coach to do. Sometimes, the Steelers have, I guess there's been a few seasons where you could say they underachieved in terms of their ultimate goal, but more times than not, they get more out of what you would think their roster would give them. A lot of changes, a lot of, positions overturning to different guys, and they just keep plugging people in. There's always somebody there.
I guess it's kind of tough. Like you have said the Belichick comparison stuff, right? And you sort of have like for the Steelers, like their excellence, like it's somewhat split between Cowher and Tomlin, right? So like you're first of all, you're comparing one of the best coaches ever, right? And then you're running into his team, and then success you've had is sort of split between two guys. So maybe that's sort of part of it. I mean, well, Belichick and Tomlin, neither one, particularly talk to the media all that much. Bill in a more tacit, in a grumpier fashion. Tomlin's just pretty quiet or whatever, and that just does the business. But yeah, I mean, it's just a great organization. That's why people want to model themselves around the Steeler organization. But yeah, tough competition. And just when right, Brady leaving the Patriots, and that's starting to come down, right? Now, the ascendance of the Chiefs, right? And the Bengals already. So it's tough.
Dawg, I feel like one of the things that Mike Tomlin does, like I feel like he's not a guy who shows up to the stadium every day, like with his car or his truck all dirty. Right? Like
no, he would never do that. He's got the discipline.
Yeah, and I think that if he was coaching the Giants or the Jets, that a frequent stop for him would be Big Ed's Car Wash in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, right there at the Bergen and Passaic County border, 17-16 River Road in Fair Lawn. Clean and green with Big Ed, 118-foot tunnel. And it makes a difference. It really does. Your car will come out cleaner than you will see it in other places, outside and inside. And as I have talked about many times, I don't know what they do, but my car stays cleaner longer after I take it to Ed's shop. Big Ed's Car Wash, Fair Lawn, New Jersey. Tell Big Ed that Diamond Diehards sent ya. Dawg, the Texans. So this is a top heavy one. So this is one of the ones where the Texans draft grade is going to be based on the two top players that they picked. They picked second and they were picking 12th. They traded from 12 to 3 with Arizona, and they landed CJ Stroud as the number 2 pick, the quarterback from Ohio State, who was so impressive down the stretch and really turned a lot of people's heads. I know Phil Simms liked him, I think, the most. I think he liked him even over Bryce Young, but there's other questions. We'll talk about that. And Will Anderson Jr., we talked about before, the Alabama edge rusher, who was probably talent-wise, a lot of people had him ranked as the second best defensive player in the draft to Jalen Carter from Georgia. But I would have been just as happy to have Anderson myself. Dawg, this was like a big move, right? Like they could have just sat there. They could have taken Anderson at 2, and they could have sat there and watched to see if one of the quarterbacks, Stroud or Richardson, was going to fall to 12 or even say to 6, where they could have, jumped up from 12. But they went up to make the move after they got the quarterback. And they're trying to pull a Jets, right? Like they're trying to get the offensive and defensive rookie of the year, like the Jets did this year. It's hard to knock what they did. It's hard to knock it. They built the draft capital, and then they used it to pull the trigger to try to get more of an impact player on both sides of the ball right at the top. It's really hard to argue what they did there. And I know that a lot of people like Stephen A. Smith really will just
gave up a ton though.
Yeah, but that's fine. We'll talk about the Cardinals next. But like Stephen A. Smith just absolutely ethers the Texans organization any chance he gets, and that's well documented. Why? But now maybe hopefully they're turning a corner on a lot of these things with D'Amico Ryans in there as the coach, very well regarded, and a couple of new bright faces to kind of push their rebuild along after some really just down and kind of murky years on the field and off the field, frankly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, should we hit the cards?
Yeah, go ahead, Dawg.
Yeah, something else. So yeah, cards. They got a good offensive tackle. They really set themselves up for the future. So this is sort of an incomplete is the sort of honest way to put in. You're kind of giving them a win, assuming that they're going to use the capital they picked up. So they trade down, got a bunch of picks. They repeatedly trade down in that. So they really set themselves up to really make a big push for next year. Supposedly a good quarterback class next year as well. So maybe they're setting themselves to potentially go up and grab somebody there. So kudos to the Cards, who again was on the flip side of the Texans, who had previously built up capital and then used it to move up and get their guys. So the Cardinals are trying to kind of set themselves up to do that next year.
It's amazing, Dawg. Right now it's April 30th, 2023, right? So, by the time most of you are catching this, watching this, or listening to it, it's going to be the month of May, but still now April, right? Mm-hmm. December 2021 is how many months ago? 16 months ago, something like that, right? They were the number 1 seed in the NFC as recently as December 2021. Now they fizzled out at the end of the year, but and now a lot of people will tell you that they have personnel wise the shortest roster in all of the NFL. I mean, it's just a crazy drop, right? So what do they need? And we talked about this in our little Zoom on draft night and even in our chat, because our pal Boomer Hilbert, reporting from Arizona, is a big Cardinals fan. He's a big Cardinals fan. But we talked about it there. The Cardinals need players. They need players. They just have to restock the roster. And the best way to do that is draft capital, right? You have to spend a draft at some point where you're just biting the bullet and you're trading down to build that draft capital. And once you have it, once you have the 10, 11 picks, either utilize all of them or utilize most of them and then continue to trade down to get 10 or 11 picks in next year's draft, right? Like, so in case you're a baseball fan and you're not really that into the NFL stuff here, each team starts out with 7 draft choices, and there's other things that happen. Teams lose them for penalties on rare occasion, and then there's other compensatory picks based on players leaving. So sometimes you get one added here and there, but essentially everybody starts out with 7, and from there, those picks are totally tradable. They're just assets. So a lot of the success from a lot of the teams that you've seen be successful started out by one or two drafts 5 years before, 6 years before, where they're like, you know what, we just got to bite the bullet. We can't worry about who the top guy is here. They weren't worried about losing Will Anderson at the 3rd overall pick, and they traded down, and they got they got the guy that that they needed to get on their 1st round pick anyway. They got Paris Johnson Jr. Right? He's an offensive tackle. He's the guy that Kyler Murray, I think, wanted. I think Kyler might have made that pick himself.
How about they stop hitting me?
Yeah, he's great at running around, but like he's like, maybe I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have to run around.
Maybe I
as
can look
much.
downfield.
Yeah, maybe you guys could like protect me a little bit.
A little bit.
And you know what, Dawg? I think I didn't expect him to be there with that pick. I thought he would have been gone.
Yeah, it was funny. The tackles were kind of going a little early, and then that's what slowed up. So it kind of goes in waves, right? Where teams will go and they'll hit 2 or 3 in a row in a position, and then stuff kind of slides down. So again, kind of like the wide receivers did for a while, and then the corners a little bit as well. That they kind of hit, and then nothing else. And boom, 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 bunch go quick.
I think this was a really good draft for the Cardinals. They end up with Johnson, the guy that they really needed to get. Now they have for next season 2 1s, a 2, 3 3s, which is to me is huge. The 3rd rounders
that's how you build your depth right there. Yep.
Yeah. The 3rd rounders are huge because if you do it right, they're going to make your team.
Yep.
If you're lucky, you get a starter, and if things go per normal, they probably should be at minimum special teams contributors or reserves to push other guys ahead of them, and they don't cost you anything. So like it's a huge way to turn around your franchise. 2 4s, 2 5s, and a 7 for a team that has not drafted very well over the years. So you get the one position of need that you need above all, and you start building your draft capital. I am going to touch on a team that is actually not in here, Dawg, because I think they did the same thing, and that's the Green Bay Packers. We're going to call him our pal, even though neither of us know Mike Jones from The Athletic. We probably should have reached out and said, Mike, you want to come on and talk to us about your draft?
Yeah.
But we didn't. We didn't do that. We just kind of jumped on here.
Saved him a little time.
So, oh, by the way, Dawg, I'm watching some horse racing on the side. I'm watching Woodbine, which is up in the Greater Toronto area, and New York Thunder just won the race that I was watching. But the horse that came in second was called 94 Expos. So our baseball people
would love it.
Our baseball people would love that. But fortunately, the horse that I needed to I would have taken if 94 Expos had won, I think that would have been better for me based on the race. But I'm good either way. Trying to win some verticals there, or horizontals, not verticals. So the Packers kind of did the same thing that the Cardinals did. They just did it in a different way. Instead of trading draft capital to get more draft capital, they did it with the Aaron Rodgers deal to the Jets. A deal that I believe makes both franchises happy and makes both franchises better. The Packers were going to, at some point, if you're giving up, like I also we were talking about the Steelers before, and you were talking about Tomlin and Cowher, and you could even go back to Chuck Noll for that matter, pretty much, right? But the Packers are like that in terms of they've gone from Favre to Rodgers, and now, they're going to go to Love for a year. At least we'll see what happens. But they took this draft and they traded Rodgers to the Jets, and they got their draft capital, and they built their draft capital up for the future because they're going to need players, and they're going to have the quarterback in there that's no longer making a lot of money, so they could afford to bolster a lot of other positions. And if, Love turns out to be Jalen Hurts, maybe they turn it around more quickly than you expect. If he turns out to be Geno Smith, maybe they turn it around quicker than you expect, right? that division is the Lions are favored to win that division. Okay. That hasn't happened, I think, since you and I have been standing on the planet. I don't know.
That's shocking.
Right?
You got my attention on that one.
The Lions are, and they're one of the Lions are the last time I looked, which I think was Friday, they're like less than 10-1 to win the NFC. They're like the third favorite in the NFC, I think. I'd have to check it out again on thelines.com. Wow. But the Lions are, so listen, they're deserving of it, I would say, because they're on the come for sure. But that's not a traditional winning franchise, and the Packers are. So, the Bears still look like they have some hills to climb. The Vikings, maybe they should be the favorite, but I guess they're they lost a few of the guys, especially on defense, and we got to see how they retool. But they still have, their offense is going to be pretty sick, I think, still. But these are small divisions when it's 4-team divisions. So we saw it quickly last year how the Giants and the Seahawks those were teams that people were not expecting to see in the playoffs. And granted, they didn't have world beater playoff runs, but the Giants were a team that won a playoff game. The Seahawks were competitive, and the Vikings were in there and they lost to the Giants. So there's room for some of these teams. There's room for a Packer team to turn around relatively quickly. I don't think it's going to be this year, but I think they put themselves in a much, much, much better position in terms of moving on from Rodgers. I think they did about as well as you could possibly do, because then they committed to that in this draft, and they started trading down and just acquiring picks. Acquire more picks. That's the key. Final one in the winners on the Athletic article that we've talked about 100 times here. The Bengals. Dawg.
Yeah, not bad. That's sort of like a case of getting the most value. Obviously, a good team, you got to pick down lower, so it's harder for you and stuff. And they got a good edge rusher in Miles Murphy. Decent corner, right? So it was very deep cornerback class this year in the draft, so this sort of took advantage of that. Maybe not a top guy, but still very capable, and then a decent safety as well. So not too bad. Kind of doing the basics, and then adding expensive guys, which I think is an interesting one too. Like, why you have that positional advantage and stuff, right? It's just like you look at if you can get this guy on a rookie contract, what you don't have to pay for that 6-7 year veteran to be like your number 2, number 3 wide receiver, corner, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why teams continually go to try and take these lottery picks on the corners and the wide receivers, right? Is that saves that guy from costing $12 million. Now you can get this guy on a rookie contract, and that frees up your dough for the Joe Burrows of the world and stuff going forward.
You know what I like about the Bengals draft, Dawg?
What's that?
It sort of has something to do with their own draft, but it has a lot to do with those other big guns in the AFC, which is where all the quarterbacks are now, right? I mean, there's basically, you can't even compare them to the NFC. The top 8, probably 8 of the top 10 are in the AFC, and maybe even 10 of the top 10. I don't know. We'll have to see after this season.
We got Danny Dimes. Come on now.
Yeah, I love Danny Dimes, so we got to be realistic here. Jalen Hurts maybe is like, now he's a guy that's being recognized there, but there's probably people that still wouldn't even put him in the top 10. Long story short, all these teams, right? All the teams with the great quarterbacks that were the top teams, like the Chiefs, the Bills, they were all adding offensive weapons. And the Bengals, as all these teams are adding offensive weapons, the Bengals are going D. I think it's a phenomenal move. They're zagging while everybody else is zigging. This goes on top of the point you made about being able to get some of these guys on rookie contracts. Build your D on the rookie contracts, because your offense already has, you already have Chase and Burrow. Mixon's there too. Their line, it kind of like is always going to need improvement, but spend the money on the D. That all you need, if you're the Bengals, is a defense that could go in and make a few plays in a playoff game in a big spot, and
get a stop.
Right. And you find your way through, right?
Yeah, a stop.
You find,
Yeah,
like how are the Chargers going to beat the Bengals in an important game? They're not, because the Bengals now they keep stockpiling defensive guys. That's how the Bengals ever even beat the Chiefs. And that's why the Chiefs turned around last year. And what did they do? They went a little cheaper on offense and they fortified their defense. They got another ring, right? So I love the Bengal draft. I love their philosophy. I think it's I think it's a huge winning type philosophy, Dawg. Also, you know what, Dawg, if you want to be a winner, right, especially in the real estate game, the Mascolo Group is where you got to go. They'll serve all of your real estate needs in the Northern Valley and the Pascack Valley, anywhere in Northern New Jersey. Go to GaryMascolo.com or call 201-615-3665. Again, all the information is in the description here, but the Mascolo Group for all of your real estate needs in North Jersey. You're looking to get in, you're looking to get out, you're looking to rent, you're looking to buy, you're looking to own, whatever. Gary and Michele are going to take care of you.
I should explain. People are watching along on the Facebook and stuff. I'm leaning forward because the Diamond Dog is twitching down here. So she heard the thunder before. She's a little nervous. So that's why the dog keeps leaning in like that.
She could jump up on the lap.
She's in a bunker right now. It's under the desk.
Well, we got to keep her safe.
Exactly.
Dawg, upstate. Speaking of zigging and zagging, if you zag across the state of Ohio, from Cincinnati to Cleveland, we have our first of the losers in the draft by Mike Jones of The Athletic, and that is the Cleveland Browns.
Shocker.
Yeah, not really. I mean, look, they make that ridiculous trade for Deshaun Watson. I never got it. I don't know why you had to pay such an exorbitant amount to just take a guy that was like kryptonite. Like, I mean, you had the Texans over a barrel. They were not going to just keep the guy. At some point, they were going to trade him, and you didn't even have to pay anywhere near it. Just in my estimation, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, so he sat out the first 11 games last year, 12 games, whatever. So 11 games, 12 weeks, and he comes in and he's just unspectacular. They were playing better without him in there. And now, okay, sure, they're set up a little bit better coming into this season. They got Cedric Tillman. He was right after the Giants pick, so the Tennessee wide receivers went back to back. I could tell you which guy I would rather have. As a Giants fan, I got the guy that I would rather have.
Yeah, Browns couldn't even get that. Browns couldn't even get that break, right?
Yeah.
Can I get the best Tennessee one? No, you're not allowed to get the best Tennessee wide receiver. You get the other Tennessee wide receiver.
Right. You're just gonna miss him by one pick. Well,
Exactly.
actually, the Giants traded up, right? Didn't they?
Did. They jumped him. Yeah, they jumped him to get it.
Yeah.
So
they jumped him to get it.
Reversing the normal.
Now, and then so they need to add players too, and then late in the draft they're taking Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the quarterback from UCLA. Like, it's a wasted pick. Like, you can't play him on the field anywhere. I mean, unless they think they're moving his position, which I don't know why they would draft him to do that. Like, just draft somebody that plays the position. But you need that special teamer. You need that, dime back. You need that, fifth linebacker. So why are you wasting it on a quarterback? This was the Dave Gettleman thing from a few years ago where, you drafted Daniel Jones, fine. You went up, you took him at 6 when everybody in the world thinks that you could have gotten him at 17. Okay, but you know what? If he's your guy, right? That's the draft day movie. If we're talking about the Browns, if that's your guy, take him at 1-1. But even if you did that, the problem was that you didn't move on from Eli Manning, right? Which then the pick makes sense. Like, nobody's going to argue it, but you can't, you weren't helping Eli Manning at all that year by taking a quarterback in that spot where you needed to take, some kind of lineman from either side of the ball, probably an offensive lineman. And this to me it's not as impactful because we're not talking about the 6th overall pick in the draft or the 17th overall pick in the draft. You're talking about a late round pick, but it still doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You need to get a player there. You have so few picks. You can't waste it. Like, what you just paid a king's ransom to get a quarterback, and now you're drafting a backup quarterback. Just sign anybody, right? Like, sign anybody. Like, maybe if you didn't draft him, you could have signed them as soon as the draft ended, right? They put anybody there. It doesn't matter because you're not going anywhere if he gets hurt
Once it
anyway.
gets hurt, yeah. Not a mistake, but a lake. How about
I could be proven. And this is, I'm not knocking Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I would have taken him. I would have taken him on the Giants with a late round pick. He would have been him or Duggan. We talked about from TCU. I thought both of those guys would have been a good fit for the Giants to just throw back in there. If they, Tyrod Taylor, if he's not around, gives you the option for a guy to either beat him out, develop behind Jones. That the skill set for their scheme is kind of there with those guys, and you don't have to pay them anything. And if you need them, maybe they'll be there. So I'm not knocking Thompson-Robinson at all. Actually, I did like him as like a late guy for the Giants, but for the Browns, it just doesn't make sense. Dog, the Cowboys. Go ahead.
Yeah, Cowboys, they were surprising on this move. So they had they get Smith, who's a solid guy, so you can't really knock that one on them. But I thought, to me, the whole draft to me was really the Cowboys need to restock their offensive line, and their line has been the strength, and that's what's really catapulted them. And they're starting to show their age, and they need to kind of restock on that, and they just blew it. They just did not season that. So they did fortify their defense, and their defense has been great. And with that, Mazi Smith will be a nice step up on that. They picked the tight end, which we were saying before. I'm like, they have a good tight end, right? Like that's again, need and value at not meeting, in my opinion.
But Dog, can I jump in there for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we both think they're okay at tight end, but everywhere I saw a much needed tight end, or they really needed a tight end, like it's obvious they were going to take a tight end. What am I like? Did I miss it? Like, did they lose all of their tight ends?
No, I mean, no, frankly, no. I mean, what they need is an offensive lineman. They didn't do it. And I just think that's going to come back to bite them. And I would say they just did not. Who they picked, it wasn't like super crazy value that you had to do it. It's just a mismatch of not lining up need and value, and pretty much kind of the whole way down after the first pick. It just didn't match up in my view.
I find it hard to put him in the loser category because I really like Mazi Smith. And in this division, especially, I think he's like exactly what you need. He was that dude in the middle of the Michigan defensive line. That team performed well. They performed well in big spots except one. And he's just like he just seems like a perfect complement to Micah Parsons, to have a guy in the middle who's just, he puts his head down, he gets the work done. He'll draw two guys into the middle. He's a guy that, like, you have to worry about there. You gotta worry about him. You gotta account for him. I think he's going to be really good. Schoonmaker, I think, is also a good tight end, but like, I
just doesn't match. It just doesn't fit.
But I also think that, like, I guess, I don't know. I feel misinformed as far as like the pundits who I mean, this was like a unanimous thing that I saw everywhere. They're going to take a tight end. It's obvious they need this guy. Surprised they didn't take the other guy in the first round. Like, but they didn't.
See, now that I could potentially have seen that, like, if you had like a Kincaid or something like that was a true sort of weapon mismatch and whatnot. And I don't think Schoonmaker was really that. And I think I think the Smith pick made more sense. I think that was more value and need coming together for the first round and stuff. But yeah, after that, I didn't really get why you were going there with tight end. Like, I don't understand that pick if it's not. Again, if they're not saying he's like a weapon guy and you want to get him first round, value and need to them, to me, wasn't matching a tight end until 5th or 6th round.
It is hard to argue, though, when you look at how well they've drafted over the last like 5 years, right? Like, the guys that they've picked have performed. I mean, they've taken a lot of guys that they've been able to step right into the lineup. They do seem to take an offensive lineman somewhere every year. right? Like somewhere in the first 2 or 3 rounds, they just always seem to take an offensive lineman. So it's kind of weird when you think like, yeah, but the offensive linemen look like they're old, but like, are they actually old? And is the defensive line more important? I mean, they in big spots, the defensive line got shredded against the run, and the Eagles just keep loading and loading up on their running game. And it's important for the rest of the teams in the division to try to match what they're doing, because it's Philadelphia is sort of the inevitable game at this point that you're going to have to win. If not during the regular season, you're going to almost certainly have to go through Philly in the playoffs over these, this next window of time. So I can't, I know, I feel what you're saying. I don't think I would have put the Cowboys all the way into the loser bracket here. Now the Jaguars, that might be another thing, but again, they trade down twice. And then I guess Jonesy here didn't really like the Anton Harrison pick from Oklahoma, the tackle, because there were, according to him, there were better players at other positions available. But I think when you take into account the fact that they traded down a couple of times and they were able to build up some more of their draft capital, and they probably got the guy that they were looking at that 24th pick where the Giants traded up. Again, not exciting to take, not the top rated offensive lineman, but I'm sure Trevor Lawrence was pretty happy about Anton Harrison being on his team now. So, but I get it. You got to, in a winners and losers article, I guess you got to put some losers in there, Dawg, right?
Yeah, exactly. And like we get around, like, I mean, who knows? We need to see a couple years from now and see how that really shakes out. But yeah, seemed like some odd ones in there. Dolphins on here, they basically they had an incomplete, right? They pretty much didn't have anything because they given up all the pick with the Brady tamper and so forth. First pick 51, got nobody of significance, it seemed like. So I don't think much to kind of say on that one there.
The big thing that happened with the Dolphins this offseason has nothing to do with the draft. It has to do that they could basically, with an improving team that does well when Tua is in there, regardless of what level of performer you think he is, they generally win when he's in there and he makes that high-powered offense a high-powered offense. And the fact that he's been essentially cleared by his doctors to say that, he's not at any more concussion risk than he ever was. And, his long-term prognosis is fine based on what he's gone through in the past. Okay. So it's a year where you didn't reload with draft picks, but look at the offseason they had last year in terms of free agency. And at some point, right, it's gotta come around. Like they probably wouldn't have had money to pay their draft picks anyway.
Yeah.
So the incomplete, versus the loser. Listen, you're a loser on draft day if you don't have any friggin' picks. So fine.
Yeah, fair point. Fair point.
And of course, Dawg, which team is always in, no matter what the article is about, which team is always among the losers?
The commies, of course, the Washington Commanders coming in down there. Which actually, I'll be honest, I think it's a little rough on that one. They're bashing for not going with the quarterback. I don't know. I mean, Hendon Hooker and Will Levis, I don't think either one was all that great. So I actually don't bash the Commanders for not reaching with a quarterback. And I think that's a classic reach one. I think they would come back to bite them on that. They took Emmanuel Forbes, which a lot of people were sort of mocking down to the Giants. Depends upon your flavor, right? I mean, the guy's a great interception guy. He's small, like I think he's about 180 now. 170, I forget now.
That's what he says, but we know he's like 155.
wiry 155. So and it's funny, we were sort of talking, right? Are you going from like big wide receivers, big cornerbacks now to small and shifty wide receivers, small and shifty cornerbacks? Almost like a flip around at this point. I don't know if I would necessarily go all the way and actually kind of call them a loser. I do think, even though it's always sort of fun, that that's really kind of laying it all on Manuel Forbes just being too small, too skinny, et cetera, and bash him on that. And I don't know if that's really fair. So we'll see how that comes out. And not taking a quarterback, and again, I think that was actually a smart move. So I actually can't really knock him too much on that.
Yeah, the quarterback thing's interesting because some people out there who I respect actually thought that was the move, where if you weren't getting one of the top, really even two, a lot of people group Richardson in there too, where they didn't want to necessarily take a chance on him. If you weren't going to take him, if you weren't, if Young or Stroud were not available to you, which almost certainly they weren't going to be, just punt the quarterback unless you want to take a chance on one of these guys that went like in the 5th round or later, because next year's draft is supposed to have the, more likely better quarterbacks that are going to be available. So if you're putting it down one more year, right? Put one of those guys in there like we just talked about for the Browns, except the problem is he's going to be your starter. And just live with it for a year, right? Live with it for a year. Probably you're going to drop again. And, some guys will be coming off the books for them next year. The team might be sold by then. And, maybe the new GM comes in and gets a fresh start. And they're able to just, start it over again for next year.
Yeah.
So sometimes these picks, you're right. Like it's like taking a quarterback like that, who you got to keep putting time into and is, less likely to pan out. It could be a little bit of an albatross. Now to me, so Hooker's an interesting guy. 'Cause I feel like he's a winner. I know he's not supposed to play for the first few weeks of the season, but his knee injury is apparently progressing well. He's like the kind of guy that I would have taken to be, a good backup right away, who could maybe mature in and play as soon as either this year or maybe next year, because he's going to be 26, I think, by the time the season starts. This guy's got a lot of life experience that's been mostly spent on college campuses. But, it took him a long time to come around. But when he did, man, he really did. So I sort of like, in a way, like him, that he's a little bit older, as a guy to take as a backup, who could maybe push somebody for playing time. So, but as far as the Commanders were concerned, I don't know if that would have been the right guy for them.
Yeah, not really the fit, I don't think.
I think actually it would have been great for the Dolphins to pick him. Like, to me, he would have been a good guy for the Dolphins to pick, where, okay, if, something happens again with Tua, now you have like sort of an alternate path where a guy is just going to be, once he's physically ready to step in, I feel like he'd be, he kind of reminds me a little bit of the way Pickett came in last year, where I think this guy is going to be able to come in and maybe perform more solidly than some of the other guys who are more heralded.
I guess one knock I would say there too is, if you're taking Forbes, he likely is probably down, available later. You still had all the wide receivers on the draft. If that's what you're going for as a Commanders, does it make more sense to trade down and build up that draft capital and jump up next year? Kind of like pull a Cardinals in that perspective. And that's probably fair. Right? That probably would have been the best value maximizing move for your team for the next couple of years.
I'm sitting here saying it, but he did go to a team that did that. The Lions picked him. That was actually, I thought that was a brilliant pick. Like, if Goff gets hurt, right?
Yeah.
Or if they need to, if things don't go as well this season for the Lions as everybody expects, it gives you like an alternate path where, this guy is going to be the age that most quarterbacks would be when they're getting their second contract, or you have to decide on their 5th-year option if they're a first rounder. And that's not going to have to be the case with him. He's potentially a guy that could learn and step in, rather quickly. So
if your Lions kind of going for it though, and this is like your sort of weird opportunity. Actually, by the way, how the hell the Lions not on the loser list? I think Mike kind of missed on that as we've been spending half the time bashing the Lions and all their picks on here. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess the running back is sort of like the typical sort of like their last move for making a run, and same with the quarterback. But I don't know. I don't know.
all right, Dawg.
I'm not seeing it.
As we wrap up the NFL draft, we remind you it can be stressful, right? In these draft rooms, you see all the time that they make these picks and there's hugs all over the place, and everybody looks like they've had a massive weight lifted off their shoulders. But sometimes, Dawg, it's hard to deal with our stress. And if you're in
it's hard to deal with the stress in this podcast right now.
if you're in the North Jersey area in Bergen County, go to Gatto Acupuncture and Wellness in Glen Rock, New Jersey. Book online at gattoacu.com or call 551-212-3845, and Dr. Melissa will take care of you with a holistic approach. She has needled me in the past, literally, with the brilliancy of acupuncture, and has a very holistic approach that it helps. It's just being in there. It's cathartic. You walk into that office, it's cathartic. So check it out, gattoacupuncture.com. Dawg, I don't know if she does it on pooches, but I feel like the Diamond Dog could probably
she needs some needles right now.
Yeah, she'd probably use it to relax her a little bit. All right, Dawg. So we see this, the Aaron Judge injury. I guess at some point it's going to come out.
We're not talking Giants after all this?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I feel like we kind of did a little bit, but we didn't really, did we?
How about a 30
all right, go quick. Go.
All right,
go,
so we got
go.
All right, great job. Top three was really sort of the key for the Giants on it. Going in, you really had need and value. We sort of talked before. Giants' biggest needs are probably wide receiver. Number one wide receiver and corner. The draft doesn't line up that way with wide receiver, and fortunately, it came down. And Giants picked up Deonte Banks, one of the top tier of cornerbacks. Great spot on that. Moved up by trading at 5, which everyone's flipping out about. That's like a guy who barely makes your team, so I'm not quite sure why Giants Twitter is all pissed off about that. And Joey Porter actually kind of sliding down, also sort of reinforced everyone else sort of had the same view, which makes you feel better too. That if someone jumped up and grabbed Porter right after the Giants, then you look like kind of a jackass. But he didn't wind up sliding down the first round. So I think basically Jacksonville was getting interest, and I'm going to guess it was coming from the Cowboys, who was right behind the Giants as well. And Giants made a better trade, jumped up, got their guy. Second round, I didn't think there was a way in the world. Every mock I had seen was that the top 2 centers were going to go by sort of the early part of the second round. Jets taking Tittman, so kind of kicking it off. And the Giants, Joe Shane was Joe Cool on this one and let the draft come to him, and managed to get John Michael Schmitz, who's one of the top 2 centers in the draft, and total value meeting need right there, and worked out perfectly for them. 2 biggest needs I would say kind of getting met on there. Coming into the third round, you're kind of hoping maybe get somebody else in the line potentially, or maybe edge, something like that. And Jalen Hyatt was still available, and he went and jumped ahead of Cleveland, and took Jalen Hyatt. And this one's probably going to be if you look back and say, is this a phenomenal draft or just a really good draft? Hyatt to me is probably the one on that. If he's the guy who's a deep threat, and he's sort of Darius Slayton 2, it's a good draft. He's a good valuable player, right? You have her on there. If he takes that next step and becomes a real game-changing wide receiver, you got to steal on that one. And I think he really sort of elevates it up. Exactly what the Giants needed. He would have been a reach in the first. He's a phenomenal pick in the third. So all in all, hard to not give a nice solid A for the Giants for the draft.
Yeah, and by one metric where they were rating the picks against perceived value, the Giants were first. I think that was also done, a chart that was done on The Athletic. What about the Jets, Dog? You're going to give us your Jet rundown, because this
Yeah,
was a little bit of a
run down
different
real
story.
quick. So they kind of got hosed a little bit by the trade up. I think they would have loved to gotten the offensive tackle. They got taken a pick before him. They did go and get Will McDowell in the fourth. I mean, a good pass rushing edge rusher is almost always a good call. So I think a good move. Again, I don't think it was the move they wanted. I think they really wanted that tackle because of Mekhi Becton getting hurt. Kai Becton, I should say. But I think solid guy in there. Can't really argue it. I think it's almost always a position of need for every team. So I think that was solid on there. Joe Tippmann, we talked about him real quick earlier at 43. Again from Wisconsin. I was kind of hoping the Giants would get Tippmann versus Schmitz. Sort of personal choice on that one, where Schmitz is a little bit better talent, a little bit better technique and so forth. Tippmann's just a bigger guy, and I just sort of in the NFC East with all the beasts that we were talking about in the interior line, that he might have been a little bit better fit on there. But again, really, you're talking 1-1A on that. You really can't go wrong on either one. So I think that was a solid one for them there. And they didn't have a third round pick because of the Rodgers deal and so forth. So that took them out on that. Then he wound up getting a tackle later on. So they added some of that value and running back later on as well. So some decent value on there, but really kind of made it to the top two. And I think each pick is actually pretty solid. So I would say, pretty good job by the Jets. And they've honestly, the Jets, I think, have done a good job in terms of drafting the last several years or so. And again, maybe the Wilson pick, maybe the one that seemed like great, and then they're not so great. So we'll see how that shakes out from going forward. But with Rodgers in there now, it's kind of go time for them. So they need to kind of get that talent in there and put them over the top.
All right, Dog, as we continue on our quick hits for Sunday during the rain. Just saw that Mike Shannon, the Cardinals legend, their legendary broadcaster, passed away earlier in this day on April 30th. Well, let's see if it was actually on this day. Yeah, it was announced. So Mike Shannon, of course, if you're a Cardinals fan, we don't have to explain who he was to you, but homegrown St. Louis native, and he passes away at 83. Longtime voice of the Cardinals, played with the Cardinals. He was on the 64 and 67 World Series teams, and yeah, that's a sad one. Mike Shannon. He actually, so when he was a player, his playing career, he had to retire because he had kidney disease. So, to hear about a guy in 1970 that was retiring, and here it's 2023, 53 years later, I wonder if at the time of that diagnosis, if he was thinking he'd have such an incredible run to just be an indelible person in the history of the St. Louis Cardinals. But thoughts and prayers and mourning go out to the family of Mike Shannon and all the Cardinals family as we lose Mike here.
Well said.
So, Dog, switching over. Now, geez, right? We talk about just injuries. It seems a little bit shallow after something like that, but that's what we told you we were going to do. Judge, as a Yankee injury, right? He's getting an MRI on his hip. The kind of initial thought is that it doesn't look like it's going to be something that's going to be long lasting, but with all of the Yankees injuries, like they're missing him by the day. They got absolutely annihilated today by Texas, which, they're affected by the Jacob deGrom injury, but not on a daily basis, just every fourth day. And, when they score 15 runs and beat the Yankees 15-2, they're not really worrying about Jacob deGrom too much today. They'll figure that out. But without Judge, without Stanton, the Yankees had basically done pretty well to start the season. They didn't lose a series, but they didn't sweep any. How much trouble are the Yankees in, Doc?
I mean, it's It's tough. They're in a tough division, right? And that's sort of something we laid out. We laid out at the beginning, right? It's just that, they're what, in my view, in my pick, the best team in the division. I still think they're solid. I think they still have the organizational depth that they'll be able to kind of weather it. So I think they will. I think they will persevere on it. But obviously, I mean, a guy like Judge is not replaceable. That's flat out full stop, right? I think there are ways they can kind of work around it. And they are in a better position to do that than they probably would have been in the past. So I think that is a positive for them. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough when everyone in your division is tough right now. That it's difficult to kind of overcome that. I mean, they'll make the playoffs. All these Vikings fine and healthy, and they'll have to kind of fight and claw it out. But could it mean they move from a division winner to a wild card? Maybe, right? Depending on how long he's out.
Well, what about the fact that if all the other teams in the AL East keep playing the way they are, maybe they won't even make the wild card if he's going to be out for an extended period of time, or they don't get Stanton back, or it's like the inevitability of Aaron Hicks, right? It seems like there's not a Yankee fan who could wait for the Yanks to move on from Aaron Hicks. They get the Judge injury, Jake Bauers gets called up literally like the first inning. He's playing left field. He goes out, makes a sick catch at the wall in left field, smashes into left field, has to leave the game, and Aaron Hicks has to come in. It's like, like Aaron Hicks better get the
Can't we get rid of this guy?
He better get the walk-off hit in Game 7 of the World Series to just justify like why he's still there to everybody. But it's just, that's probably the biggest takeaway from the Yankees this year, I would say, that everybody wants Hicks to move on, find his next stop wherever it's going to be, and yet you can't get rid of him. Like he's just inevitable. He's just there, and as long as he's there, I think that's unless he just rediscovers his form from the best parts of his career, like just no Yankee fan is going to be satisfied seeing him out there in any kind of regular fashion in left field. But right now, they just don't really have anybody else to put there. They'd have to probably, I mean, if Judge is out for an extended period and Stanton is not going to come back, I think they start to consider calling up Jason Dominguez, that the other of the big top prospects, who could be the best of them all in terms of the bat. So, but I don't think they're there yet. I think they probably want to let him bake in the oven for a little more in terms of his skills. They want his skills honed. But that could be, another step. If this Judge hip injury is really serious, they might decide to do that. Or if Stanton is going to be out longer than the perceived, 4 to 6 weeks when he first got the injury. He's about halfway through that now. They're going to need somebody else in the middle of that lineup. I mean, Bader will come back, but you can't expect him to hit the way he did in the playoffs, which was at the Babe Ruth level. He'll settle your outfield a little bit. He'll give you some more options for guys that you could put in right and left, but he's not going to be, he's not a middle of the lineup Judge or Stanton kind of guy. And Dominguez potentially is that. And you can see Volpe, like he looks like he's a nice player. He's more a top or bottom of the order guy right now, right? Like he's not a 30 homer guy.
Yeah, and the second time around the league too, that he may face a little bit more trouble as pitchers start to pick up on him.
Yeah, for sure.
Typical, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Rangers have a really great offense. They've been off to a really good start. The deGrom injury, you were lamenting about it before. You're like, man, that contract already looks bad. I don't think so. I think it just depends. Like, I mean, if they keep getting, four,
but don't look good.
four scoreless innings out of them, and
guys, fucking 4 arms bother them again. 4-arm injury, no bueno.
I know.
No bueno. Well, it goes back when I was saying that. Like, last I heard, he still had a torn UCL that like never got fixed. So I'm
So
God
did
willing.
Tanaka.
Hopefully he's a good dude, man. Yeah, well, okay. But the stress that he puts on that arm and everything, I don't know. I hope it works out for Jake. He's a good dude, and we'll be pulling for him. But boy, that's a risky contract, especially for that kind of franchise. And we'll see. I mean, he's phenomenal when he can pitch. No one better. But to steal it from Banks, took it from Parcells. The number one ability is availability. So if you get phenomenal starts, but you can only make 10, that's a tough one.
But so the Rangers are at the top of the AL West. As we're doing this, they're 17-11. The Astros are 14-13. We did expect some regression from the Astros. The Angels are 15-14. The Mariners off to the slow start at 12-16, and the A's, the pathetic A's, 5-23. Already 12 games out. The A's are already 12 games out, Dog.
That's rough. Oh man.
Oh my
You
goodness.
feel for that fan base.
Well, they're
not for the owner. You feel for the fan base.
They're not going to have their team there pretty soon. They're going to go to Vegas probably. So, so the Rangers are off to this, very solid start, and Corey Seager's not even in there, right? For he's still got a few more weeks. If they continue to go and get by, they don't need it. Like if they could stay and just ride that wave, right? Just stay a few games above 500. If it keeps them in first place, if it keeps them in a position where they could grab a playoff spot, right? And they could nurse deGrom along and get deGrom in there once the playoffs start. I mean, it's kind of a win, right? Like you don't need to have him. Like you really got him more for a playoff type scenario than you did for April. So I don't worry about him.
I know, dude. You're asking a lot of the rest of that team to hold off those teams.
I know, but that's why you have other guys. Like look at the Mets. So we'll jump into the Mets, right? Where you've had at the top of their rotation, you have Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. Verlander is probably a week or two away. He's like a minor league. I think he's
supposed to be this week, actually. He's supposed to be back in Detroit.
Okay. So
he threw last Friday.
Okay.
Good outing.
So you're 15-12. They got 2 rainouts against the Braves, which they're going to have to figure all that out. And with the new schedule, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. But yeah, well timed, right? No Scherzer, no Verlander, and no Braves. Braves are already 18-9, but they've played a weak schedule. 11-2 on the road, by the way, for the Braves, which is unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you looked at them. I mean, it's funny. You just look at the rotation for the Mets. So, Scherzer, Verlander, Senga, Quintana, and Carrasco. It's like, well, you got Senga.
Yeah, and Peterson just got optioned.
Pretty good guys on there.
I think Peterson just got optioned, and Brooks Raleigh, I think, just went on the injured list. So they
easier.
They have a few questions. The thing is, if Justin Verlander, like I'll take 15-12 in April with Justin Verlander making no starts and Max Scherzer having a 10-game suspension. I'll take that because those are miles, those are innings, those are pitches that they don't have to pitch now. And that's a little bit more freshness for these, late 30s, early 40s guys when you need them in October. You don't like you need to get through now. You do. You need to be able to make the playoffs. You do. But you don't need that as badly as you need them. Even if you make the playoffs, if those guys are not there for October, your chances are kind of burnt.
Yeah. It's funny. We were kind of coming into the season saying, hey, maybe Mets will go the 6-man rotation, right? So kind of take some innings off the top dogs. Now it's like we could barely stitch together 4 and let's bray on the spot starter in here. But yeah, that's a good point that it will pay off dividends down there. I mean, they kind of blew it, now running up a little bit more with some of the soft schedule early in the season. They made it back up with a great West Coast road trip, which is only a nightmare for them. So yes, all being said, not necessarily the path you're looking for, but again, 15-12, okay. A little different. Last year they were kind of out running right out of the gate. This year it's a little bit trickier, but I do like the guys that are kind of coming back. They're starting to get Alvarez and Beatty, if you start getting those bats starting to go, that really puts them in a better spot. I mean, it's funny, of all these years, like the Mets have always had, lots, plenty of pitching, and if any of the position players go down, it was a problem. And now, right now they've got an excess of position players, and the pitching rotation is holding up for now, but they're putting a lot of stress on the 6, 7, 8 starters, and using up a lot of their pen too.
Yeah,
You just gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta get there, but
yeah,
it's tough.
it's part of the haul. I mean,
Yeah.
like we talk about, we say it all the time. You can't win a pennant in April, but you can lose it, and they didn't lose it.
Yep.
They didn't
Good
lose
point.
it, right?
Yep. Yep.
That's big. The Cardinals, on the other hand, 10-18 in April. I don't know. Maybe their game is still pending, so maybe they get to 11-18 or 10-19.
But who is rocking in that division?
The Pirates at 20-8. Well, it's going to be 20-9 because the Nationals are beating them up as we speak. I don't think that one's over yet. Let's see, it was 7-1 late for Washington. So you figure that the Pirates are going to get that 9th loss. Even so, they'll still end the month with the best record in the National League.
First team to 20 in the league. Nice.
Yeah, and the only other team to 20 is the Rays at 23-6 with the ridiculous start and a 14-2 home record. But again, Dawg, a lot of this, and we saw it with the Mets, a lot of this has to do with, this is a product of the new schedule where every team plays every other team and you play less within your division this year. So some of these teams that have streaked out early have had the benefit of a very easy schedule to start it out. The thing is, if you perform well during that time, like say the Rays have, you could really put yourself and buy yourself a lot of chips for the future. Where, when things get a little rougher, you've built up a little bit of clout in the bank. If you have that easy schedule and you don't play well, you're screwed basically.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just done. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, like you see the Yankees now after this loss, they're tied with the Red Sox at 15-14. They're in last place in the AL East, 8 games behind Tampa. The Orioles are 19-9. We identified them as a huge bargain at 76.5 wins on the over-under. The Jays are 18-10. So the whole AL East, where the Yankees have, 3-7 in their last 10, the Yankees can't afford to dig themselves a hole here. Like these other teams are there. Like there already is a gap between the Rays, the Orioles, Jays, and the Yankees with the Red Sox over there. Less was expected of the Red Sox than the Yankees, but there's got to be real concern here to start with. And I wouldn't be surprised if, depending on what this Judge MRI says, if it's bad news, like they might make some kind of move. They might just do it via trade or Dominguez. Again, remember it was the April 29th show in 2021 where we made all the predictions that they would get Anthony Rizzo when nobody was talking about it, and that Judge would make them a better team if he was playing center field, and that Stanton needed to get into the outfield, and all 3 things happened and it totally changed their season around. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody. They weren't. They'll admit it. All right, Dawg, we're going to finish it off with the Yankee story-ish kind of thing. But a few weeks ago, or whenever it was, days, I don't remember when it was, but on Twitter.
About a week ago, I think.
Okay,
like that.
So on Twitter, our pal, her is Gina Muscato. So you could go follow her at Gina Muscato, spelled just like it sounds. And if you can't figure out how it sounds,
Muscato.
There you go.
Gina is Gina.
Yeah. So Gina, it was during the Yankees Jays series, and she was lamenting about, as a big Yankee fan, how, seeing Don Mattingly on the Blue Jays bench, just that Mattingly was her favorite player ever. And I said, "Oh, you should have seen him." And she said, "I did see him. That's why he's my favorite player." I said, "Oh, I thought you were much younger than I was." So I said, boy, I got a great Mattingly story for you, but I just don't feel like, typing it all on Twitter, but on the next show, I'll tell it. So Gina, I'm going to tell it now. All right. So Dawg, it's Old Timers Day at the stadium. And I can't remember exactly what year it was. It was 87, 88, 89, something like that. I can't remember the exact year. And a bunch of us were driving from New Jersey to Yankee Stadium. And we're there, of course, many hours before the game. And
was Joe Serra in the convoy?
Joe
Did
Serra
you make
was
it 20 minutes?
there were no Serras in the convoy.
Serras. Okay. All right.
But despite it being very early, there was a good crowd of cars. And back at the old stadium, I feel like it's gotten actually a little bit better, maybe a little bit easier to get in and out of the area to where the new stadium is. And, maybe there's just more parking lots or more better lots. But back then it was kind of more of a shit show and a free for all, right? Mm-hmm. So we get off of the Harlem River Drive and we're cutting through right where the Polo Grounds used to be, up there, where you get to the bottom of where the Polo Grounds would be. And then you make the left onto 155th Street and you go over McComb's Dam Bridge. Yes, that's a real thing. So that's where we were headed. Big, huge line of cars. You're waiting for the light to change. There's cars just like gridlocking both ways. Like you can't get, you got to be super aggressive to try to get through. And we're in the left lane, and both the left lane and the right lane are, everybody's trying to make the left, right? So as these things go, especially in the late 80s in the Bronx in July or August or whenever it was on a hot day.
Get a little tense.
Yeah, not so much that, but
Okay.
the just, out of high school, maybe into early college guys, or maybe we were still in high school. Yeah. So there's gentlemen that are looking for a tip for washing your windows. And you didn't really want those guys, washing your windows because you weren't really sure what was on the dirty rag that they were washing your windows with. So anybody who went to the Yankee games, especially back then, I don't know. I feel like they don't do it as much anymore, but that was like always a common occurrence. Like you'd be stuck at a light and you're like, oh God, the guy's going to come up and he's going to start washing the windows and then he's going to demand money and you're not going to give it to him because you didn't want him to do it, blah, 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 blah. So we're in that exact situation. And I'm the operator of the vehicle. And the light is like turning. And the car to the right of me, a nice red BMW, is sort of like battling me for that last kind of spot to maybe get through the light. And I see that, I'm like, if I could just get through this light, like I could hurry up and wait on the next line, but the window washing guy is not going to approach my car, which I just washed, right? So I totally cock block and cut this guy off, like just blatantly. And he's stuck at the light, and the window washing guy is going to go now over to his car and do it. And that guy was Don Mattingly, and I cut off on Old Timers Day. One of those years back. Yeah. Yeah, that was that. I was like, oh shit, I just cut off Don Mattingly. I'm like, well, I guess maybe he'll tip the guy.
Yeah, exactly. You're trying to help people out.
Yeah.
I got $20 out of it.
Yeah, I just blatantly just totally cut off Don Mattingly. And it was weird because, usually you'd never be going to a game before the time a player would be going there. Yeah. But obviously he didn't really have to be there early because it was Old Timers Day, and we were going there, an hour before Old Timers Day was even starting, right? So it made sense. Yeah. So I cut off Don Mattingly, and he had to get his window washed by the P rag from the guy on Old Timers Day.
Squeegee guys.
One of those years.
Taking you back.
So Gina, that's your story. That's why I didn't tweet it, because I feel like this was like a way better way to tell the story.
You can't do that in 140 characters.
No way. I just not with the emotion.
A thread.
Speaking of emotional, Dog, I have the my New Jersey Devils. I got the jersey on.
Yeah,
Some of you maybe have noticed it, but you could just sort of see the top part of the crest. As
quite the night for the
as
Devs.
as
The,
well,
I mean,
they
I
were
mean,
left
no,
for
no, no,
dead.
no.
They were
Oh,
left
so
for dead
came
after
back towards the
losing
end.
5-1 twice, and then came back to win 3 straight, and then a little
Uh,
league home cooking helped the Rangers get back on it.
oh, stop. How about shitty goaltending by the Devs?
No, but there was
No, come on,
no,
stop,
come on.
stop. He gives them back
A
goals. Too.
phantom tripping penalty exactly when they needed it. Really, I'm not saying it would have changed the
I would have
score.
called. I got you back, and I didn't think they should have called that one.
Or
Someone
the,
screaming for a penalty shot. Like that's
oh,
really
come on.
aggressive.
Not even a penalty. He got the puck.
Yeah. I hear you.
And then the second one was, the second and third ones were equally as awful. And then the fourth one was fine. But whatever. Hey, listen, the Devils, the
Set up
refs
a great game tomorrow night.
the refs have been against the Devils since,
Oh, here we go.
Jim Schoenfeld. Like this is since '88. So this is not anything, we're
go.
way used to it. We're way used to it.
Here we go.
I said I don't know if it would have changed the outcome. Okay. But it didn't help. They were a factor.
Okay.
They were a factor. Okay. Even Ranger fans agreed with
Those-
that. When they didn't care, they were,
True.
the vociferous Ranger.
Goalie sucked though.
He didn't suck. The
He did
first
suck.
the
He
first
sucked.
3 goals he had
had
no
some bad
chance
goals,
on.
dude. He had some bad goals.
They were not bad.
Bad goals. Bad goals.
They were not bad goals.
You gotta step up.
The first, and actually, I thought the Devils did blow it on the 4th goal, on the Barclay Goudreau goal. Goudreau's left skate hit Akira Schmid's left pad as the puck was going in off of. So Goudreau, the puck was in the air and he like bunted it forward. Schmidt might have been able to get his pad over or keep it on there, but the foot, the foot part of the skate, it hit the goalie's pad, and it pushed it back. So it wouldn't have been a penalty for goalie interference, but it could have disallowed the goal, and the Devils didn't try to have it reviewed. I thought it was at that point it's at least worth a review because you're going down 4-1 with 12 minutes left in the game. You might as well just take a shot. And of course, big news for our fans north of the border of the Toronto Maple Leafs, who have now won a playoff series for the first time in 19 years. So that was big as John Tavares scores the overtime goal in Game 6 to eliminate the Lightning from a chance of a 4th straight conference championship. So big news on the hockey fronts. But yes, I will be wearing the jersey on Monday night for Rangers Devils Game 7. As of now, I will be watching it in my kitchen or the family room, but we'll see. If one of your listeners decides that they have an extra, then at Diamond Diehards on Twitter, that's it. We'll do it.
We can make that happen.
Yeah, we can make it happen. But until then, we get this one in the books. Special edition NFL draft review this year instead of a preview last year. That is going to do it. Follow the Dawg on Twitter at Jeff Healy 8. That's the number 8. You can follow me, Joe Rizzo, at Diamond Diehards on Twitter and diamonddiehards.com. If you want to subscribe, it's got most of our information over there. And if you happen to be watching the live stream on Facebook, we appreciate it very much. Tell a friend to tell a friend about it, because this is where we live stream most of the time that we do shows. So it's going to wrap it up. A rainy weekend in the New York metro area is complete. Mets get mostly rained out. Yankees get drubbed in Texas, and we started all over again here in the month of May, which is now upon us. That is going to do it for the Dawg, Jeff Healy. This is Joe Rizzo. Diamond Diehards is out.